Hey, so we usually use the special prop key when rendering lists in React. For example, here I have list of 5 users. This is the name, this is the age. So I will use for a map function. I will map them to a React element and I will put a key. This key will help React to detect the changes happen to this list, reordering, deletion, or insertion, and we all know this. But what we usually hear is if you use indexes of the array, of course, this will lead to some unexpected behaviors. In this video, I'm going to show you one of these unexpected behaviors and how we can solve them. The second thing, I'm going to show you a different use case for the key special prop outside of rendering lists, which will solve some issues. And the third thing, I'm going to tell you what actually the key special prop will tell React to do. And I'm going to start with that. So when you render a component and pass to it the special key prop, and you'll give it like, hey, key equal a value. If this value changes, what React will do, hey, I will create a new instance from that component and render it. I won't re-render the component. I will just create a new instance if the value changes and render this new instance, and the previous instance will be completely removed. This is what actually the key prop will do behind the scenes, and that's basically it. Now I will show you the special or the unexpected behavior, or one of them, that will happen if you use indexes instead of something like generated on each render, like we usually do with short IDs or UUIDs. So without wasting more time, this is the first example. I'm just rendering a 5 users, name, age, and this button exists in the parent component. This is the actual code. So this is the parent app. We have this user state containing 5 users, and in the render, I have this state.map. I'm rendering a user for each object I have, and the key is the index from the map. Okay. Now I have this button which will update the state. This is state in the parent. It will attach at to each name and multiply the age by 10. Now everything works fine, even though I'm using keys. I'm using, the index as the key. It's totally fine. It's working. And as you can see, here I am logging the previous state. This is or I'm logging the current state, okay? Here. As you can see, everything is working fine. But when things will start breaking, when you are using indexes as keys, when things are more dynamic, I'm just rendering these. I'm not doing anything. So to make things more dynamic, I have here some code to update this user component, which only containing this card with this button inside of it. And this is the title, the name of the user. I'm just gonna update it with this code. So let me go through it really quick. So I'm taking the props. I'm not destructuring them. I'm just taking them and put them inside this use state hook to create like an internal state for this component. So I can, for example, change the user age or name. And the name state, I will put it in the input so the user can change it. And the age, I will put these 2 buttons to increment and decrement them using these 2 functions. Super simple, right? So let's save and check this out. So I can actually minimize and increment the age. It's working. But what if the parent gives me a new different props? What will happen? So I'm updating that. And as you can see, the current state, which containing these values, can you see? Okay, you can now. Which containing these values is not reflected in the UI. I'm still holding the first value from the first render. The first values from the first render. And this is why, because now our app.js actually got re-rendered. So all of its children will be re-rendered again. But since these components have the same key, they will be just re-rendered. They won't be like created again, which means like resetting the component. They will be just re-rendered. And if a component re-rendered, the user state hooks won't be actually run again. These will run only in the first time of render. And I can maybe add some console logs to make things more clear. So let's actually display the props or clear everything. Now let's update the parent. So the parent got re-rendered. As you can see, all of these 5 actually got re-rendered, and we have the correct props values. As you can see, these we have them, but the state is not reflected. That's why, just like I said, user state will be called only one time in the first render. And if you remember when I explained what key tells React to do, hey, if this value changes, don't re-render this component. No, you create a new instance and render that. And this is why people use something like short IDs or UUIDs, which I'm importing here at the top. So let's actually call the generate function here. And what this will now do, hey, the parent got re-rendered because the state updated. I will have a new different IDs for each component from the previous render, sorry, right? Each time this component renders, this generate will be actually called inside each iteration in the map function. So each iteration or each render, this will be a new different ID, which will guarantee for us that React will create a new instance from the user and render it again, which means these will be called again and everything will work smoothly. Let's test it. So I'm gonna do anything I want, update the state, and as you can see, it actually got reflected. Yeah, that's the first example. I hope this was clear. It's not that easy to come up with these examples, but yeah. This is the first one. The second one does not contain anything or does not have anything to do with lists. It's this, let me remove, it's this viewer component. So let me open it. I have here like, I'm just simulating data being retained from an API. So I have these like 3 objects, which they contain an ID. This is the ID from the database. This is the type of the component. It's a file. This is the content. This is if this if this file is checked or not. So false, true, false. This is the title. So I'm gonna just display a list of buttons like this, and each time you click on a file, this is like representing a file viewer. You'll click on a file, the file will be displayed in a viewer. So for example, this file will be displayed, now this file, and so on. And each time you click, so yeah, this I'm rendering them. Each time you click on a one, I'm just gonna put it in the state here. As you can see, the selected file. You clicked on a file, I will put it in the selected file. If we have a selected file, and this is by the way a shortcut for this boolean, true, render this, else render that. This is a shortcut because in this case I'm only rendering one component. You will do this normally, right? But a shortcut is to check for a single value. If that is true, this will be rendered. But the issue here that this should always be a boolean. So convert it to a boolean like this. Yeah, you can use anything you want, but this is the small tip on the side. Okay, so if I selected a component by pressing on one of these buttons, I will display the viewer and pass to it the content to be displayed. As you can see, this is the content of this, the third file, and this is if it's checked or not, this checkbox. Okay, so let's actually go to the viewer and check it out. I'm just having content and the checked passed, as I already said that, and on change I will just change the current checkbox. Maybe in a realistic example this will set an HTTP request and so on, but as you can see I'm using the checked props to add this default state. Maybe in this example this does not make sense, but I'm just simulating what could be a realistic example. Okay, so you will just use maybe put the state or the props in the state, and then you will behave on that state, or maybe map it. Anyway, so this is the basic idea. So if you look at the data, this one is not checked, this one is checked, this one is not checked. So let's actually start. I will refresh the page, go down, let's click. This one is not checked, checked, not checked. I'm gonna click on the not checked, go to the checked. As you can see, this is not reflected on the UI. I am actually putting this value here as a checked in the checkbox. Click on this one, it won't change. Let's do it again, but start from clicking on the checked file. which means maybe downloaded or whatever. So this one is reflected. Now clicking on the other ones that are not checked, it won't be reflected. This is the same thing, the same example I already explained above, but without lists, with just a single component. As you can see, all of these components will end up, if you follow the events here, by rendering the same component. If I have a selected file, render always the same component. And this checked and content will be different. So each time this will re-render again with different props, but the same issue. User state will be only called once, the first render. So you have here two solutions. Like previously, I used to do this, use effect, and I'm gonna put that one here. Use effect, if you used it in a specific way, it could behave like a monitor. If a specific value changes, call this callback. So you can do this. So if checked changes int value, one of the dependencies here, just call set as a checked and pass to it the checked. I used actually to do this to solve this exact issue. This tested, not a checked, fine. It checked, not a checked. So this actually solves the issue. But for other developers, when they read this, they will be super confused. Why? The other issues with the other fix, which actually relate to our video here, is to come to the viewer. Remember, we have this unique ID, right? So, and when we select a file, we actually put the whole object in the state. So, and I'm using this key prop now outside a list. So, selected file. .id, and I'm not using use effect anymore. Okay, not checked, not checked. This now, on each time we click on any one of these, the file viewer component will not be re-rendered. It will be recreated again and inserted into the DOM. This is what will happen. It will be recreated again, not re-rendered. This is why the user state actually got called again, because it got created again, the whole component, not re-rendered. Yeah, I hope this was useful, or maybe explain more stuff in React. Yeah, this is it. So I hope I did everything, or explain everything I wanted to explain, because if I'm not, I will be sad. Maybe I will re-record the video. Anyway. I hope this was useful. Bye.